Welcome everyone to today's webinar, Evolution of a PMO Leader, Lessons from Matthew McConaughey. This webinar is one in a series of several that we offer monthly throughout the year. Procept has a series of webinars on project management, change management, leadership development, business analysis topics, and others that of maybe interest on a management or leadership side. These videos are recorded and will eventually be put up on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. So if you want, go to youtube.com and look up Procept, that's P-R-O-C-E-P-T, and you'll be able to see what we have. Today, our speaker is Hussain Bandukwala. Hussain helps PMO leaders succeed through coaching, workshops, and other resources. He works with PMO leaders and executives to conquer the biggest challenges in meeting strategic goals, achieving operational efficiency, and delivering project value. He's authored several PMO-focused books, is an IDG influencer, and speaks frequently on the subject at PMI and other industry events. He's also an instructor of some LinkedIn Learning, LinkedIn's premier online education platform, professionals across all disciplines. Previously, Hussain has led operational technology and regulatory programs and projects for over 14 plus years, with a combined budget of over $30 million. He's managed globally distributed cross-functional teams of over 50 resources in fast-paced matrix environments, and he's been acclaimed by C-level executives for being a versatile leader with a focus on getting things done. I've known Hussain now for about a year and been quite impressed with his abilities. I'm very excited in you spending some time with him today. Before he begins, just a quick little quick discussion on some of the logistics of today's webinar. There is an on-screen interface where you'll be able to click your hand to raise hands if you have a question. There's also a chat or question window. What I ask you to do is, during the presentation, type your questions into the question window as they occur to you. The idea being that later on in the presentation, after he's gotten through his main slides, we will open up the floor to questions, and any questions that are stored in that window will be the first ones that we will ask the speaker. If you wish, you can even make a comment in your question that you would, that we could unmute your line and you could ask it verbally. Otherwise, I'll just read out your question to Hussain and he'll respond. So type your questions in the question window as we go through so you don't lose track of them, and we'll get to them at the end. You do get PDUs for today's presentation, and I can share that information at the end. Hussain, take it away.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Kevin. I really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone here in the audience for taking time out from their lunchtime and being a part of our webinar. I really appreciate it. We're going to be talking to you about PMOs, PMO leadership, and of course, Matthew McConaughey. So moving. Okay, there you go. Perfect. So, I won't go to tell you a bit more about myself because, Kevin's done a wonderful job of introducing me. And, I'm sure if you have more questions, we'll talk about that at the end of the presentation. So really excited to have you here and really excited to get on with this. So one thing, I remember I had this presentation at a virtual summit series, and interestingly, one of the reasons why this sort of became a very popular topic or a webinar as part of the series was the title, right? Evolution of a PMO Leader: Lessons from Matthew McConaughey. Now, when you think about leadership, Matthew McConaughey is probably not the first name that comes to your mind, and it doesn't come to my mind either. But interestingly, for some reason, I was doing a bit of reading on him, and I came to realize that the journey that he's come across, from this, fun, good-looking, dashing guy, doing rom-coms throughout his career, and then, from that point onwards, getting into, Oscar roles, Oscar-winning roles, Oscar-nominated roles, and continuing with that trajectory. It just can't happen by chance. And so when I started digging a bit more into this, it was very interesting that his journey in itself, the renaissance of his career, was nicely nicknamed by the New Yorker magazine as the McConaissance, right? So, going from movies like Dazed and Confused, where, you'd probably just go ahead and, have popcorn and just put your mind out and just let things unroll to very, very serious and meaty, chunky roles like Dallas Buyers Club. That journey in itself, in terms of shedding out of that specific image that he had attached to him, and working with the industry to make sure that he got sort of juicier roles like the Lincoln Lawyer, and then eventually getting into Dallas Buyers Club. That's where he won his Oscar. But then even moving forward, where I think he was part of Interstellar, a Christopher Nolan movie, and Christopher Nolan, as you may know, is a guy who is, bent on doing amazing, serious, as well as, thinking forward sort of movies, and Interstellar was definitely a good example of that. So what came about doing that? And when I started looking at his journey, I was like, this is something that probably all of us as project management leaders, as PMO leaders, can probably attest to, can probably learn from as well. So I wanted to go ahead and share with you 3 lessons from Matthew's career transformation, how he went from a rom-com guy to a Hollywood A-lister to an Oscar-winning powerhouse. The first rule, the first lesson really, is don't let them pigeonhole you, right? And pigeonhole is such a wonderful word here. I sense that PMOs in general and PMO leaders in general sense that all the time. When we take a look at Matthew's story, what it meant for him, he had, as I mentioned to you, an image of a rom-com guy. People had low expectations from him. Nobody believed that he had serious acting chops. And if you think that we are a lot under pressure, based on our previous experiences, based on our career trajectory that has been where it is, and improving to not only headhunters, but then HR agents, and then our future bosses, to what we can really bring to the table. Think about these global icons who have to deal with not only the executives, the industry gurus, but also the perception of the audience that are expecting off of him. And so he was continuously offered similar roles again and again, rom-com roles, and he got, after a while, he just got done with doing those, because there was a bit in him that that just didn't want to get associated with that anymore, and he wanted to do more with his life, he wanted to do more with his career, and he believed in himself that he had more to bring to the world. Similarly, as aspiring or first time or even seasoned PMO leaders, what does this really mean for you? A lot of times PMOs are considered cookie cutters. How many times have I heard situations where PMO leaders come to me and say, what, Hussain, my executive went to a certain event, he met other executives there, and they saw that their PMO was doing phenomenally well, and the executive came back to me and he said, what, I want a PMO just like that, right? So that specific PMO that worked, or that type of PMO that worked well for another organization, the expectation was that the same type of cookie cutter PMO would probably work for our organization as well, and that doesn't work. But that is the reality in terms of the expectation, the perceptions of all of these, right? And also, project management office, yes, it has project management in it, but it's a role. It could be a role in certain instances, or it could be a department in certain instances. And it's always a business function that you want to go ahead and associate with PMOs. I mean, PMI states that most of the PMOs that are successful have some sort of a strategy component to it, but nevertheless, it's considered as an administrative body. It's considered as something that can help you only with reporting, only with setting standards, providing tools and templates, and not more. But every PMO that is successful in its organization brings some sort of nuances that are unique to that specific organization. And that's something that we need to go ahead and make sure we are looking deep into as PMO leaders, as first-time PMO leaders, as seasoned PMO leaders, and breaking away from that specific pigeonhole as well. And we talked about your PMO within the pigeonhole. Now let's talk about you as the PMO leader and how you can break that pigeonhole, right? So the way I consider PMO leaders evolving into from where they are today to where to how they will become PMO leaders are two paths, two journeys. The first is the conventional journey, which is what you see on the screen right now, right? So this, you could either be a software developer and then, become a project manager, then become a portfolio manager, or then become a PMO leader, or you could be, a sort of a management technology consultant, and then become a business analyst, then become a program manager or a PMO leader. And, you could have multiple permutation combinations of this to get in here, and know that I can include roles like software architects or database managers or something like that. But traditionally, the path of PMO leaders is seen as something germinating from a tech-based role into a project management role, then eventually into the PMO leader. And then the other part of the journey is what I call the non-conventional role, right? Which is where I have seen folks who are either in BAU or business as usual or operations roles, and then they get into the project management role, and then they become a PMO leader. Or some people just go straight from being a strategy manager or just having strategic experience or operational experience and very limited project management experience, and then becoming PMO leaders. Or some people who are are even just, let's say, business analysts. And then this has been a situation where I've worked with someone and I've seen this happen, is that there was a business analyst who wanted to go ahead and create a PMO because he was fed up with the way that things were happening, the things were being managed. It was a wild west situation at his company, and he decided to just go ahead and set up a PMO for his organization. And once he went ahead and did that successfully, he was able to go ahead and get into the role of VP of customer success at his organization. So again, a phenomenal journey for him. And whenever I do these types of webinars, and whenever I poll the audience of PMO leaders who are in the audience, and I ask them, if you were to go ahead and map your career to one of these journeys, the conventional journey, which is this, or the non-conventional journey, which is this, what would you say you'd fit in? And that ratio of conventional to non-conventional is really not too far off. It's either 60 to 30%, or in some cases that I've seen, even 55 and 45%. So even though a lot of people are in non-conventional roles, it's still considered non-conventional, and not a lot of people talk about it. But that is the reality of things. And again, if you are in one of these situations where you are in the operations area and in the strategy area, and want to really get a great sense of an overall overarching view of the organization where you can make a tremendous impact and want to become a PMO leader, know that you can do that. You can break out of that pigeonhole of just the conventional journey of becoming PMO leader and become a PMO leader yourself as well. And so, in this situation, both for your PMO as for yourself, really look at, what the status quo is, trying to see how we can break it. The perception that you have seen prior to, for within your organization, or even if you want to go ahead and become a new PMO leader, you can go ahead and do that. From a PMO perspective, you need to really understand why your PMO is really needed to really add that value bit by bit, keeping it fresh. And then from a PMO leader perspective, don't show them what you have done, show them what you can do for you for that organization. And every organization will have certain skills that they would value more as a PMO leader than others. And there might be a match with what you already have to bring to the table. So that is lesson number one. Don't let them pigeonhole you. Lesson number two is find the passion in your work, right? So with Matthew McConaughey, he became really faded with the roles that were presented to himself. He actually went ahead and started saying no to some of these roles. And again, this is a guy who, even with these kind of roles, is a very popular actor, known worldwide. The pay is pretty good, to say the least, right? But it was something that wasn't satisfactory for him. He wasn't happy with what was going on. He was willing to take, those intense salary cuts to go ahead and focus on roles that, he may not be viewed as someone who could pull it off. He may have to take a lot of convincing and a lot of selling himself to the executives in the movie industry to get him some roles that would work. I think his first break was the Lincoln Lawyer role. It had a bit of meatiness in it. It was a decent movie, not but that sort of led the path to other roles for him, right? And so when he started getting the roles that he wanted, his passion shined through his performances, and that's something that for us, for PMO leaders, project managers, something that we need to go ahead and keep in mind as well. I had a conversation with someone recently. She was working for a pretty massive British telecom, and she told me that within the past 12 months, the PMO was set up, shut down, and then asked to be set up again. And the pace at which things were going, the amount of impact that she was able to have, or I would say not able to have, was a bit of a passion killer for her, to be honest. I mean, she was very, very skilled. She had the right background. She had a lot of motivation to become a phenomenal PMO leader, but the organization in itself was not supportive in itself, and that has nothing to do with her. It had to do with all the past of the past of what the PMOs were or rather were not able to do for that organization, and B, just the culture within the organization. And it takes a village to go ahead and make it a dent to that, and not just a one person role. But if you're able to get past that, if you're in an organization where you are able to move the needle and able to set up a PMO successfully, you can do better and more every time. In order for you and your PMO to be successful, you have to keep it fresh. You have to, on a regular basis, whether it's 6 months, 12 months, 18 months down the line, have to ask, what more can I do to help others within the organization through my PMO? What more can my PMO do for that? And so, one of the suggestions that I have is, when we look at, PMOs and the possibilities that it can have, all the project management disciplines, whether it's schedule management, budget management, financial, scope management, change management, scope, resource management, vendor management, communication management. There's so many aspects of all of these things. Should you go, cover all of these as soon as your PMO is set up, or should you go ahead and focus on the ones that really, really need to be addressed? Make sure that they're properly inserted, there's a great buy for those, and then start going ahead and adding those in. And my recommendation, my suggestion to people has always been that you focus on that latter piece, go deep, and then wide. And you will find, as you go ahead and figure out why your PMO is really needed to, to be able to articulate where the pain points, the challenges for the organizations really lie, and it'll become very, very obvious to you that it probably makes sense for you to focus on 2 or 3 disciplines of project management first, make sure that they're set in, and then after that, go ahead and start addressing more. And once that's done, once you've addressed the areas of project management, then you can focus on, okay, which are the other departments that I can help? Which are the other geographies that I can help? What are some of the other non-project management related areas that the PMO could potentially be help as well? I mean, as PMOs are master facilitators. They're great negotiators. They're fantastic collaborators. They make sure that people are brought to the table and there are objective decisions that are being made. And there's so much over there that PMOs can do. And when and if you have that passion for your role, for what PMOs can potentially do and help organizations, that passion will come through, and you'll be able to make these differences for your organizations through your PMO. And lesson number 3 is always challenge yourself to be a better you, right? So one of the things that really inspired me personally was when I actually heard Matthew McConaughey's Oscar-winning speech, and Oscar acceptance speech, and in it he told the audience that his hero was himself in 10 years in perpetuity, which means that today, at this point in time, his hero is himself 10 years from now, how much better he can be, what are the areas he can improve upon, how can he get there, and then 10 years from now, once he's reached that point, that goal, that hero in himself, the will and desire to become even a better version for the next 10 years is the next set of target that he has set himself. I think that's such a wonderful way to look at things, right? I know we often look at role models, we try to emulate others. I do myself as well, but achieving yourself, creating your goals so that you can be a better you, looking yourself introspectively, is just a phenomenal way to improve where you are, and also when you try to hold yourself up against other people's standards, sometimes you let others' perceptions judge how you should be, but rather what really matters is what you think you should be, how you think you should be. And I think this specific piece, this specific lesson resonates quite a bit for me. And so, if you're a PMO leader, the question for you is, what are you doing to get better? If you're aspiring to be a PMO leader, the question to you is, what are you doing to get there? And the one thing that really resonates with me with PMOs that are always successful is that they're always evolving, right? The organizations that remain stagnant are the ones that are essentially going to be dying, and therefore all organizations are continuously updating their strategies, updating their operational models, updating their goals that they want to shoot for, going ahead and identifying new partnerships, establishing different branding identities. And with those organizations, their PMOs need to evolve with them as well, and so should great PMO leaders as well. So what does it take to become a great PMO leader, right? And what I have come up with is what I call the O framework, which identifies the attributes of a PMO leader. And when I look at the attributes of a PMO leader, I think of this, O piece, which is a bit of a donut. Within the donut hole, the right side is the skill set, the left side is the mindset, and then the ring in itself is your overall experience. So let's talk a bit about each of these and what I mean by this, right? So the skill set is really the 4 key categories of skills that I believe any PMO leader should have, and great PMO leaders should make sure that they improve upon these skills that they possess within themselves. From a project management perspective, you obviously have all your skills associated regarding the project management disciplines, so whether it's schedule management, reporting management, deliverable management, and so on. From an organizational skills perspective, understanding the strategic nature, getting a good understanding of the business planning, business case planning, benefits management, analytical skills, consultative skills, getting an overall purview of how businesses and business units are set up. That's phenomenal to have. Functional skills. Now, if you're setting up a PMO that is functional or departmental focus, for instance, whether it's a PMO for an HR organization or a PMO for a marketing organization, then having being either been a part of those roles or having been exposed to them in some ways is always beneficial as well. And then, of course, to me, the most important skills here, the people skills, right? So whether it's, skills around collaboration, skills around facilitation, around influencing or relationship building, these are some of the skills that great PMO leaders need to have. Then, one thing that a lot of people don't talk about is really the mindset, right? The skills are great, but that enable you to go ahead and do those things that you need to do as a PMO leader. But the mindset allows you to visualize and plan those things before you're able to do them. And so from a mindset perspective, I break that up into two different areas, leadership and attitude. So leadership mindset includes things like being a visionary, having the ability to prioritize. One thing that's not on this list here is emotional intelligence, having the right temperament, and not only holding yourself accountable, but have the ability to holding others accountable as well. And that is key to have as a PMO leader. And from an attitude perspective, having the perseverance, being curious, being a bit of assertive and methodical when you need to be, and being a very strong believer in PMOs. That's a massive attitude to have. I mean, if you don't believe in your own PMO, don't expect others to believe in it either. So you really need to be sort of an evangelical figure to make sure that that passion, that yearning, that belief in PMOs is contagious within your team, is contagious within your executives and your stakeholders. So, and then finally, from an experience perspective, this quote here is something that I really appreciate. It's by Rita Mae Brown. Good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. You always go ahead and make mistakes, but it's those mistakes that you learn from, and that galvanizes you. Great experiences are phenomenal, but bad experiences are something that you may likely come across, but that makes you a better PMO leader in the future. And one thing that I just want to make sure that is very loud and clear is that having portfolio management experience or program management or project management experience is not the same as having a PMO leadership experience. It's, whether you've been working within a PMO, outside a PMO, or having had the opportunity to set up PMOs or just lead them in the past are very different in terms of the the other project management or portfolio management experiences. Yes, the skills that you learn are definitely transferable, but it's not the same experience. So I think trying to get that first PMO leadership experience is phenomenal. Just having the project management experience alone may not be enough for you to land a PMO leadership role. So this is quite a bit of attributes that I've outlined here. And one of the things that I did want to share with you was why. Why do you want to care about these attributes, and where do they come at play? And I wanted to go ahead and quickly walk you through the phases of a PMO setup, how you want to set up and evolve a PMO, and where do these specific attributes then come into play for this specific journey. And hopefully that will sort of convince you that these are some of the things that you will probably need to think about becoming better at as you go about trying to become getting that first PMO leadership role, or becoming better in your role if you already have one. So the first phase of the PMO leadership of the PMO setup is assessing the maturity. Here is where you want to go ahead and figuring out why the PMO is really needed. You will go ahead and identify who the stakeholders of PMO are. You will figure out what questions you want to ask them. You will meet with them. You will understand what are the challenges and pain points from a project management perspective or strategy perspective that those specific stakeholders are experiencing, and really trying to analyze to see if there are any patterns there. So if you look at skill sets perspective, being able to schedule those having a good overall view of, when you want to make sure that this specific phase is done, scheduling that accordingly, figuring out what are the deliverables that you need to produce through this phase, doing the analytical analysis of what are the skill set, what are the challenges and pain points that these stakeholders are experiencing, and trying to see how you can map them to potential roles and responsibilities. And then also the opportunity that you're actually meeting many of these people, for the first time as a PMO leader, building that relationship and trust, and managing their expectations. That, I think, those are some of the skill sets that really resonate and are leveraged within the specific phase. From a mindset perspective, just having the ownership of making sure that, yes, this is something that is, your baby, and you're going to take it from start to finish. That is going to really shine through if you truly have that ownership, and it'll shine through when you go ahead and meet your stakeholders, and what your vision is versus what you expect, what others perceive the PMO to be versus what it will eventually be based on their challenges, is something that you have to be very articulate with, and that is something that you want to go ahead and show across as well. Now, having prior experience here, of course, is definitely helpful, because it will help you, having gone through that cycle before, you'll be able to go ahead and quickly understand, where the PMO challenge, where the organization's challenges are from a PMO perspective, and be able to identify what are some of the quick wins and deliver them as well through this phase, so that the stakeholders and the leadership is convinced that you're not just all talk, you're delivering through action as well. And even though the PMO is going to get done in the next bit of time through this entire process, that you've delivered some immediate value that could be a good preview to what is yet to come. The second phase is the establishing the target state and defining the roadmap of the PMO. And this really is all about, taking a look at where the challenges for the PMOs are, and going ahead and mapping those challenges to the roles and responsibilities of the PMO. So, for instance, one of the things that you heard from your stakeholders was, none of our projects are getting done on time, and you say, okay, that's fine, and let's go ahead and figure out why that's the case. So you go deeper into this, and you ask them, is it because that you think that the project managers aren't good enough? Do they need more training? Or because there is just not a lot of rigor and discipline in terms of how the projects are being managed? Or is it because resources keep just getting recycled and moved on from existing projects to other new ones that come up, so there is no set priority of those initiatives? So depending on what the root causes are, the roles and responsibilities of the PMOs could be different, right? So in certain cases, so for instance, if the project managers aren't good enough, then you probably need to go ahead and put in some training in place, or making sure that you're bringing some fresh talent in that is more experienced in project management. If there is no prioritization, and people just get shuffled from one project to the other, then there needs to be a lot of stakeholder management and a lot of strong sense of resource management that needs to be put in, and that needs to be a role and responsibility of the PMO. So based on that, reporting on what the PMO will do, planning all of that out, and then communicating this and influencing your stakeholders accordingly are some of the skill sets that are going to be really important for this specific phase. From a mindset perspective, I would say that being accountable and having that right temperament is going to be key, because here is a situation, here is a time when once you go ahead and tell your stakeholders, hey, I spoke with you and I spoke with all of these other people as well. This is what I heard, and this is what I'll be doing. Some of the stakeholders that you spoke with might start backtracking from what they said. And this is where, you want to go ahead and make sure that you're holding them accountable and saying, no, by the way, this is what you said. I understand that there might be a few things that you might have missed out, but totally backtracking on some of these things is something that you probably want to make sure that you are putting, a strong hold on that. In addition to this, when you go ahead and share the roadmap, you're saying, you know what, I'll have all of these roles and responsibilities of the PMO in action within either the next 30, 60, 90, 180, whatever the timeline that might be is a day. So you are actually using that roadmap, communicating it to your stakeholders and your executives. You just that in that action alone, you are holding yourself accountable. That is something that you will be doing, and you're marketing that to everyone in the organization. So yes, by doing that, you are putting yourself in the spotlight, making sure that you are going to be able to do that as well. And then being decisive here and having the change management perspective is key, right? Because this is the one thing that will happen before your phase, the next phase of setting up the PMO, the actual rollout will come in. But here is where you're sort of making sure that everyone in the organization, whether it's your team, whether it's your stakeholders, whether it's your executives, whether it's your peers, they have enough of ammo that you've given them, that buying in, accepting the PMO, accepting the changes that will come with it, whether it's a change in the way they work, whether it's a change in their roles and responsibilities, whether it's a change in their reporting structure, whether it's a change in how they send information, receive information, consume information, that whatever it is, that they're able to go ahead and make sure that they are acceptance of it, they are able to buy that in. And here, as you're going about sharing the roadmap, you are convincing them that this PMO is there to help you. It's going to be there to help your needs. And you are not only, telling them what it's going to be, you're involving them through this process. And that's where the whole change-oriented mindset is going to be helpful for you. And with the having the right experience here, making sure that you've done this in the past is definitely going to be helping you here as well, because you'll be able to really get a good sense of the viewpoint of all the stakeholders, and then also thinking about, okay, so this is where what all the stakeholders are really looking for. This is what the organization potentially can or cannot do based on its maturity. How does that fit within the overall industry standards, and what would be the best approach for the PMO to take within this specific organization at this specific time? The experience here can definitely help you along all these lines. Phase 3 is prioritizing and implementing. So that's basically putting all of this thing, your entire roadmap of setting up a PMO into action. I always encourage all PMO leaders to go ahead and make sure that you conduct a pilot first before you do a full-on rollout of the PMO. And even if the rollout of the PMO is not a big bang approach, it's in various phases, whether those phases are based on the roles and responsibilities of the PMO, or it's in terms of who the PMO is going to be addressing, what type of projects is going to be handling, or a combination of all of these. No matter what it is, do go ahead and make sure that there's a small pilot that you put in place, just so that you're able to test all of the things out and are able to also understand what your expectations of the buy-in could be, whether that is the case or not as well. And so from a skill sets perspective, from project management, this is literally a complete rundown of the execution of the PMO is a project on its own. And so that all the skills that you have are going to be important here. And then communicating and then presenting, influencing are some of the people skills that you will be definitely needing here. From a mindset perspective, again, ownership and temperament are there from a leadership perspective, but from the attitude piece of mindset, this is the point where, once you start executing, some things might slip through the cracks, but being a firm believer in the PMO and being methodical about all of this is going to help. And at the same time, if there are certain things that require game time decisions or some change, last minute changes, being flexible and accommodating for the needs of the stakeholders is key. So for instance, let's say you went ahead and created a specific template for requirements management, right? So collecting the requirements for new projects, and you notice that even though that document's completed, it's not been completed in the way that you really would have ideally preferred, the way that you've actually trained people on. And in the beginning, it's fine, because you have to be flexible about that, because the idea is that even if it's not done properly, it's done consistently. And once you have that consistency in action, then you can go ahead and improve their level of execution, their level of correctness, their level of accuracy along the way. And then of course, having the experience here, previous experience of having a PMO setup is definitely helpful, because you're able to go ahead and quickly identify through people who are already there within the organization, who you could peg in as potential champions, who could be, your evangelists as well, and help in influencing the naysayers, quickly identifying them, bring them on board. Previous experience in this exercise can certainly help you there. And then finally, phase 4, striving for continuous improvement. That is something that I mentioned earlier as well, about keeping things fresh, continuously asking, whether 6 months, 12 months, 18 months down the line, understanding the reason why you originally set up the PMO. Are those reasons still applicable? Are they still valid? Do you need to do another round of understanding why your PMO needs to be there? Do you need to make some tweaks into what you're already offering? Do you need to extend the services of the PMO? Those are some of the things that you need to be thinking about here. And a lot of the skill sets that you had in the first phase, assessing the maturity, would really come here from both a skill set and a mindset perspective. Because think if you are doing that why exercise again, it's really looking at phase 1 as well. And so with experience though here, what really can help you is that you'll be able to quickly identify, yes, you should go about going through the why, but because you want to hear things from the horse's mouth, you don't want to go ahead and make assumptions. But having the experience can really give you a very solid gut check where you need to probe into first to really validate those findings, and that can help you shrink your time in terms of continuously improving your PMO. So I know that was quite a bit of things to sort of really take in, and I'm sure you'll get a lot of you will be getting this deck as well. But we talked about what we learned from Matthew, how we can apply it to you as an aspiring, as a first time or as a seasoned PMO leader. We talked about what are the attributes that you need to become a PMO leader and a great PMO leader. And now let's talk a bit about how do you acquire these attributes, right? And because this is something that you need to tackle on hands-on, you need to go about taking action on your own, and you just don't want things to happen to you by chance. So taking control in your own hands is the key here. What you should be doing, and what you see on the screenshot actually here is what I have created. It's a tool called the Attributes Introspection Guide, and you will receive a copy of this after the session as well. It outlines all the attributes that we talked about, and it has the appropriate subcategories and the categories, whether it's a skill set or a mindset, whether it's part of experience, if it's a skill set or mindset, whether which subcategory is it under. All of those things are within the specific tool. And what you can do is you can, again, there is no right or wrong answer here, but based on where you consider yourself to be, you could go ahead and map yourself out to rate yourself to where your current sets are, where you aspire to be for those attributes, and what the gap is. And then based on that, you could either go ahead and do your own prioritization, or let the gap in itself do the prioritization for you. So for instance, let's say from a negotiation perspective, my current skill set is 4, and my aspirations are to be 5. The gap is just 1, but there are other skill sets. Let's say, for instance, communication, where my current skill set is 1, and my aspirations are 4. The gap there is 3. But even though from a gap perspective, the communication attribute is greater than that of negotiation, I have a personal inclination of becoming better at negotiation than where I am today. So for me, that could be a higher priority, and I can just map that manually on this tool as well. And then using those tools, using this tool to prioritize which attributes I need to focus on, and working on them. So that you'll get this tool after the session, along with this deck as well. But in order for you to cover the gaps, to become better at certain attributes, there are a few things that I'm suggesting here you could do. The first is any roles that you can get within your organization or outside that could help you become better in those attributes, that can help you practice those attributes. Perhaps looking at those, finding mentors within your organization, or someone within the industry, or someone within your professional or personal network that can help you become better at those attributes and hold you accountable. Coaches and classes, people who you would turn to, who are experts in those specific attributes, who could teach you how to be better at these. And then your own personally being responsible for it by either going through books, blogs, publications, podcasts, and then making a conscious effort that whatever you're learning, you're continuously practicing that as well. Now, I have some suggestions here for certain books here. You've got great books in terms of strategy, about PMOs, about how to be a great leader in PMOs, how to deliver high impact or business focused PMOs. And I haven't even looked at any blogs. There are tons of podcasts out there as well. There are online courses, like Kevin mentioned earlier at the beginning of this presentation. I have a course on LinkedIn Learning called Setting Up a PMO. That's something that you can look out for. There's obviously Toastmasters that you can go to for amazing communication skills, and other options like Coursera, Udemy. And then if you're looking for coaching in itself, if you just type PMO coaching specifically, and if you just want to be coached on PMO setups, evolutions versus attributes themselves, that in itself can get you a lot of results. And finally, I just want to say that this is something that is a personal undertaking. Yes, this is a professional webinar. This is to make sure that you are going to go ahead and help. This is going to help you professionally in a lot of ways. Becoming a PMO leader in itself and doing a bang-up job is going to help you phenomenally in your profession, just because the kind of experience that you get, the kind of visibility that you get in the organization. I know PMO leaders who've been gone into VP and C level roles. Some have gone out and done this multiple times and become independent freelancers and are command a tremendous amount of respect, as well as a hiring rate. But from a personal perspective, all of these attributes in general just help you in different phases of life. Just as you can see, the way project management is was pervasive across many industries, and then also into your personal life. Some of these attributes, can help you, develop a stature, develop the kind of respect, and be able to perform well, in the personal arena as well. So, just like Matthew McConaughey, who was able to go ahead and, look at himself introspectively, see where he wanted to be, see what was not making him happy, thinking about what could make him happy, and working towards, getting there. Even though it was a longer road, it took him about, I would say, about 5-6 years to get there. That probably involved a ton of tolling, ton of, schmoozing, ton of networking, ton of convincing, perhaps even becoming better at his acting chops. This is something that you can go ahead and draft and craft for yourself, for your personal journey, and for your professional journey, should you and want to become a PMO leader. And not just that, but a great PMO leader. I know you got this. Thank you. So Kevin, with that, I'll hand it off to you and see if there might be any questions here.
Thank you very much. That was a great presentation. I learned a lot myself and thoroughly enjoyed it. There were a few questions that came in. So the first question is from David, who asks, which do you think is a successful path? It seems to me that the non-conventional path would inherently bring more of a strategic business focus than a project focus.
That's a great question. So I would say that there are, if I go back to this slide. So, that's a very interesting question. And I think that the type of a PMO leader that you become, that is again dependent on what you think of success is relative to you. If you think that, becoming into a project, leading a strategic project management office right off the bat and getting into that role right, from the beginning, that's something that you could probably attribute to. In certain organizations, even though having a bit of a strategic bent and not having a lot of project management experience, that can require some convincing, but it can lead you there. Now, if you go by this path, most likely there's a chance you might become an IT PMO leader, or a PMO leader, that is more administrative or governance focused. But having said that, that would be the step one of the PMO. And then as you continuously try to evolve the PMO, there are chances that it will start hitting multiple areas of the organization, and either start getting a strategic bent to it, or you yourself might get elevated to, let's say, developing multiple PMOs in that organization, or eventually even the EPMO for your organization. So I would say the success really depends on how you see it, what kind of organization that you would like to work for, and what kind of a PMO you personally would like to be a part of. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much. Somebody else asked a question. They said one of the key elements of your framework is experience. And they said, when one's just starting out, how do you start getting this experience?
That's a great question. I think that one of the things that they can do is start practicing this on their own. So not in their real life, but I would say having some sort of mock sessions, whether it's in terms of whether it's in terms of joining any sort of a coaching program that can help them through that, or if they're within, if they're members of PMI, or where they can meet up with some buddies and have a mini group where they can say, what, let's go ahead and have mock scenarios where we're setting up PMOs for each other, and let's pretend to be stakeholders, let's pretend to be executives, and see how that turns out to be. And using this framework to go about, setting up those mock interviews, setting up those mock PMOs, that will share, that's something that you will really find helpful at thinking through various situations and scenarios that might come up when setting up a PMO. Another thing that you could do is identifying certain mentors who've done this before and doing these mock sessions with them. Now, one thing that I mentioned to you is, when you're in getting that first PMO role, everybody starts somewhere, right? And in those situations, don't tell them what you've done, show them what you can do for them, right? So when you're eyeing those specific opportunities, firstly, in terms of setting out your resume or your social profile on LinkedIn, etc., position yourself as a leader, as someone who's taken charge and control, right? So don't be the doer, be the leader. That's one. Once you get the opportunity to have the interviews for the specific opportunity, for those roles, literally have this framework that you have here and show a roadmap of what you can do for them if you were hired tomorrow. And that will, by chance, that will help you, tremendously, and increase the probability of you getting that role, because it will show those people, show the HR folks, show your future leaders of, this person knows what he or she is talking about, and they can probably make a dent for us when we bring them on.
Excellent, thank you. Are there any other questions? Please type them into the questions window or the chat window, and we can have a chance to have Hussain answer them. We still have a couple minutes. So please just type them into the chat window or into the questions window. Okay, Karen asks, can you talk a bit more about the mindset piece of the O framework and how that differs from the skill set piece?
Absolutely. So, like I mentioned in the presentation, skill sets has, your project management, organizational, functional, and people skills, and your mindset has more of the leadership and your attitude attributes, right? So these are things in terms, this is more in terms of how you are able to visualize, how you handle yourself in certain situations, how you are going to go ahead and bring in the level of ethics, transparency within the organization, how you're going to develop the kind of culture you want for the PMO within the team. That sort of that curiousness, the results orientedness. Being in a PMO can be an interesting position to be in. It can be something that can be a role model, if you will. And sadly, because of where PMOs have been, there aren't too many rooms for slip-ups, right? As you may know, 50% of PMOs are successful after 3 years of their creation, only 50%, according to the Association for Project Management. So, when you're doing this and doing this right the first time, you need to make sure that, all of these attributes that I've outlined here are something that you feel that you were, you may not have, you may not excel at them, but are able to at least instill and or influence your team at least, these, so that they, who are your representatives when they're going to be going out there in the field to help you either set up the PMO or managing projects or managing resources, etc., that they're able to go ahead and handle these accordingly as well. I hope that answers the question. If you have a follow-up on that, please let me know.
No, the comment she typed back was that answered her question. That was what she was looking for. Okay, last chance, final question, anyone? Oh, going, and gone. Okay, we're at the top of the hour. Thank you very much, Hussain. That was an excellent presentation. For those of you who are interested in PDUs, we'll send out via email the information on how to claim PDUs for this event. If you're watching the recording on YouTube at a later date, the PDU claiming information will be in the description of the event, in the YouTube video description. We run these webinars monthly. Wherever you heard about this session, please keep your eyes out for the next one. And thank you very much, everybody. Have a good day.